Welcome to Yeukai Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host.
Hi everyone and welcome to the show. It's Trevor Stockwell here with you today. Now before I introduce Lindsey, our guest, let me ask you this. Do you ever struggle with confidence issues? Despite your achievements, do you ever feel like a fraud sometimes? That's kind of natural for most of us at some point. On today's episode, Lindsey is going to share some practical strategies that helps us appreciate our uniqueness. Now, she's both a life coach and an executive coach, and author of the Amazon bestseller, Live a Big Life in a Quiet Way. So welcome, Lindsey Hood.
Thank you ever so much.
Great to have you on the show and the opportunity to chat with you. We're going to dig into details about your book in a little bit, but maybe to start us off, who is Lindsey? Share us a little bit about your journey.
Okay, so as you said, I'm an executive coach. I qualified back in 2012 as a coach, and before that I had a corporate career, and when I decided to become a coach, you do a lot of self-analysis as part of your training, and doing that, I realised that I'd had a behavioural pattern for my whole career, and that was going for big promotions, going for the big opportunities, as achieving them at different points, and then about 3 to 6 months into getting that new role, having this complete crisis of confidence, having that feeling that I was going to get found out, that my manager was going to tap me on the shoulder and tell me that they'd made a huge mistake and I was out. That never actually happened. And after sort of that 3 to 6 months feeling, I would then feel more comfortable in the role, would then get to the point where I was wanting my next challenge, and I would repeat that cycle over and over again. But I didn't realise I was doing that, as I said, until I trained as a coach. And that's how I then specialised within the imposter syndrome, because what I've just described is exactly what often happens with people that are struggling with the imposter syndrome. Is they put themselves into these positions because they want to achieve, because they want to live their best lives. But once they're in that position, that self-doubt can creep in and become crippling and actually then take over. And those feelings of being an imposter, that you're a fraud, you're going to get found out, you're not good enough, intensify and take over.
Okay, yeah. So what would be, for maybe people, I'm sure people have heard the term imposter syndrome now and again, maybe not really thought much, is that something that I have kind of struggle with or not? But what would be some of the, is it just more than a bad day? What would be the difference?
Yes. So the original research was from Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes back in 1978. And what they found was they were studying high-achieving women, and what they found was it was in an academic setting, but these women did not own their successes. They thought that they were there because they had got lucky, that they had deceived somebody within that they'd convinced somebody they were better than they actually were, but they didn't really believe that they should be in the positions they were in, which obviously was not the case. So that's kind of the distinction. It's when you have the accolades, that you have maybe the client testimonials if you're in business, you have all of this evidence, you maybe won awards, you've got qualifications, you've had training, yet you still haven't internalized, you don't actually believe the success that you have has been earned and deserved.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, yeah, I guess if, I'm sure none of the listeners out there do this, but every now and again you hear of somebody that lies on their CV and just kind of exaggerates a little bit more than what they should. I wouldn't recommend anybody do that, but I could understand if somebody's done that and then has achieved a specific role, then they've kind of set themselves up to have those kind of feelings, haven't they? But this is kind of different, isn't it? This is more of the self-belief, self-confidence side of things. That is it linked to kind of perfectionism, or is it more than that?
No, perfectionism is often one of the signs that maybe you are struggling with the imposter syndrome. And how this then shows up is the fact that you're holding yourself to this really high standard, and you then convince yourself if you're not hitting that high standard, you're obviously not good enough, because if you were, you'd hit the high standard. Except that high standard, perfectionism is very subjective. So my idea of perfection is not going to be the same as yours or the same as somebody else's, and we tend to hold ourselves to a much higher level. So when we've got that as our benchmark and then we're not achieving it, we further the story we're telling ourselves in our head is we're not good enough, we're not deserving of this. So yes, perfectionism can really play into, and whether it's a cause or an effect would be up for negotiation, but it definitely can show up within that, within those feelings of being an imposter.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking, like, our listeners span quite a range of business owners and people that are maybe not yet entrepreneurs but looking at it. So I can imagine there's people that, you know, I haven't hit this target yet. What am I doing? I'm a failure, kind of thing. And, you know, I'm not successful. I've been going a whole 12 months and I'm not successful. There's lots of kind of traps that we can set ourselves. Like you say, it is kind of subjective based on lots of other things. But yeah, we set ourselves targets to fail more often than not. And I think, why do you think we do that? What's kind of at the root of it from what you found?
So I think some of it is comparison. So I think there is a certain element of, we look at everyone else and we see what they're doing and we go, they're great at whatever they're doing. So by definition, they can't be an imposter. I'm comparing myself to that. I don't stack up, thus I must be an imposter. But what we're not doing is comparing like for like, because what we're doing is we're looking at their outward show and we're not thinking about how they're feeling, the fact that they might be feeling exactly the same as us. We're also not necessarily comparing where we are in our journey to where they are in theirs. So I really like the analogy of, if you're going to, you want to be a filmmaker, don't compare yourself to George Lucas and Star Wars. What you need to do is be comparing yourself. If you feel that comparison is kind of that motivating factor for you, compare yourself to George Lucas's first piece of film that he did. That is where you are potentially now. As you progress, you can compare and maybe benchmark if that, as I said, is motivating for you. But don't take somebody's end position and think that was what they woke up with, because I can guarantee you it isn't, and it's really unfair for yourself. You get that feeling of I'm not good enough when you're not actually you're not comparing fairly.
Yeah. No, that's a really good way of putting it, actually. Yeah. Would you say, because I know you're a disc trainer as well, aren't you? And for people out there that don't know what disc is, we touch on it every now and again on the show because I do that as well. I think it's fascinating. I think people are fascinating. I think learning about the different kind of personalities and behaviors and how someone naturally acts because of the way they're wired is amazing. So, but would you say, because I don't know the answer to this, so I am curious on this one particularly, would you say certain personality types are more likely to be either perfectionists, but not necessarily perfectionists, but suffer from the imposter syndrome?
No, I would say there's probably some that you might consider or are more likely to have the outward signs. So, for example, if somebody's deep and dominant, the chances are they won't be showing that because that's not the way they show up in the world. However, as we know, how somebody's showing up isn't necessarily how they're feeling. So actually, statistically, up to 70% of the population will struggle with these feelings at some point in their lives. With women, that actually increases to 88%. So there is a slight difference between men and women, but not necessarily hugely within that. But this is something that is it's a shared experience among the majority of us, not the minority.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go out on a limb slightly here. I think ladies can suffer from it for two particular reasons. One, they're more in tune with their emotions. Guys, most of the time we're not. We just don't go there. I don't think that's healthy necessarily, but I think that's the reason. And also I think women do have, particularly within the corporate and business world, they have a bigger ladder to climb in the sense of it's not a level playing field at this point, is it? I think it should be. And we've had some other guests that have kind of really promoting kind of equal values and rightly so. But I think, being in an environment where you feel you have to achieve more just to be level with somebody that's male, maybe. And, there's race and ethnicity and all of that wrapped up in that as well. It is wider than just that. But, I can kind of understand why that would be the case with sort of, everybody. If you're human, potentially you have that issue at some point. What would you say would be maybe some of the sort of tips, strategies that you help your clients with that the listeners can kind of take on board? And either, I suppose the first thing is to recognize if they're really struggling with that, or, are they just having a bit of a bad day because it's raining or whatever? But as you say, if it's kind of a pattern of behavior, or something that regularly comes back, what would be sort of the first step to coming out from that?
Okay, so I would say the first thing that I encourage people to do is to grab a journal or a piece of paper and start to write down all of your achievements. And these don't have to be the big things. If you've got the big things, put them down. But when I say achievements, what I mean is anything you can do today that at some point you couldn't do. So that might be texting, it's walking, it's talking, it's driving a car, it's using a computer, it's giving a talk, it's absolutely everything and anything that you can now do. And why I think this is important is it starts to build your own evidence bank of all of the things that you've already overcome, that you've already done. So when those feelings and that self-talk, and we're tuning into that inner critic, we start to have our own evidence to shut it down. So this isn't then, oh, so-and-so said I'm this or that. It's like, actually, no, on piece of paper here, these are all the things that I've done, I've overcome, I've been resourceful for. And even things that maybe you didn't achieve on the first attempt. So, for example, learning to drive. I know I didn't pass on my first attempt, but I kept going. It's that resilience. It's showing yourself over and over that you have got all of this evidence of why you are good and why you're deserving to keep going and trying and attempt things.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's really good. Would you also say kind of affirmations, or regularly reading out maybe what you've written down in achievements? Is that a good thing to kind of reinforce it as well?
Yes, so I think I don't think this is a one and done exercise. I think it's then, if you can, become that regular every time that you achieve something, every time you reflect, whether that's daily, weekly, add it to your list, keep building that, because you're building that muscle of, yes, I can keep achieving, I can keep moving forward. But it's also then, as you rightly said, reading it, taking it in, using that information. So you've not just done it the once, because if we don't internalize that, if we don't make it part of who we are, we don't feel that confidence. Because to me, confidence isn't that outward show. It isn't being the loudest voice in the room, unless you are, which is absolutely awesome as well. But it's that, how do you feel? How are you showing up as your authentic self, how do you feel comfortable in your own skin? And I think accepting all of the things you've already achieved is a huge first step within that, because you don't have to shout about it if you don't want to. Again, if you do, awesome. But if you don't, that's okay as well, because you then feel it, you know it, and then that naturally starts to come through when you're showing up in life, that you have this inner confidence because you know this about yourself. It's that self-awareness piece.
That's really good. Yeah. It's funny you should say that, actually. Not that long ago, this year, so within the last few months, I've started a accomplishments log, and that's not to brag about. I don't, from what, as we're chatting and thinking about this, I don't suffer from imposter syndrome, thankfully. But the reason why I did it partly is just to track my growth, because I am intentional about personal growth, and I want to be able to look at things and go, okay, what's the result of you growing? Are you just growing because you heard it was a good thing to do? Are you actually achieving certain things? And also know that I'm wired to easily love activity, and activity doesn't always translate into accomplishments. You can just enjoy doing stuff, very hands-on kind of thing. So it was kind of to clarify that, but I can see, I've seen the value of that already. I don't maybe look at it as often as I should, but I can see the value of it. So that would help to build the self-esteem, the self-confidence as well, wouldn't it? Yeah, that makes sense. There's a phrase I heard a long time ago: your inner world creates your outer world. And I think it's so key, particularly in this topic, but just, what are we feeding ourselves inside? Because we are getting exposed to a lot of things through social media and everything. And you kind of touched on it earlier with the comparison. Like, if my best mate just happens to have a better way of taking photos and posting them on social media, suddenly, if I'm comparing myself, he's better than I am. And like you say, we're different. We're not the same. And we're not supposed to be the same. I think we should be more concerned if we are the same as somebody else. There's some similarities, but we don't need clones, do we? So it's just like, the celebrating your uniqueness, I think, is key. And it's really good that you do that through your coaching and, the different ways that you help people. So let's maybe dig into, I think we probably have already, but let's dig into the book a bit, because the title's Live a Big Life in a Quiet Way. So you've kind of alluded to this anyway, that, we don't all have to be extroverts or high eyes to kind of talk about it all the time. But whether you are, whether you're not, it's brilliant. We love you. We accept you for who you are. You are unique. But unwrap a bit more about the book.
Okay, so the reason I wrote the book is partly because I want to obviously help people, but I myself identify as an introvert. I hit SC on the DISC framework within that, and I am right on the bottom edge of that. So I know it takes a huge amount of energy for me to move into the dominant space, to move into the influence. It's not to say as we know, it's not about our abilities, it's where our natural energies are. But learning that about myself, I kind of realised that I'd held myself back for a lot of the time, because I'd put that self-limiting belief of I'm an introvert, so I can't do X, Y, and Z. And it's about the fact that actually you can create the life that you absolutely want, but it's finding the way to do it in an authentic way. So it's linking in with that imposter syndrome. Is how do you want to show up in the world? How do you want to be? I set up my coaching practice. A lot of life coaches out there. So if we take my own journey and that comparison piece, I was potentially comparing myself to the Marie Forleos, the Tony Robbins, the Mel Robbins. They're really larger than life. They are amazing at what they do. They're really big motivational speakers. But then from my point of view, I'm sat there going, well, that's not me. So I must be crap at what I'm doing. And it was then actually accepting, no, I am who I am, and I will attract the people that are attracted to that. And it isn't actually always introverts. Sometimes it is an extrovert because that's what they need at that point in time. But it's that mindset shift of, you don't have to fundamentally change who you are to feel a certain way, to be confident in your own skin. And it's not to say it doesn't take work, it does. I can't say that I'm confident every single day, and I still struggle terribly with feelings of being an imposter at different points, but it's having the strategies, and that's what I wanted to share, was those easy strategies to help people move into a more resourceful state quicker.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's really, I like what you said. Yeah. We love everyone that you mentioned, but yeah, we are all different. And if you're not that way, that is fine. That is absolutely fine. I'm sure they would agree and say the same thing. It's kind of very vulnerable in the sense of if it paints part of your journey as well. But I guess what I found is that's where the richest learning that you can share with others comes from, really, isn't it? Like, you're not just reading a book and then spouting that off. You're writing from life experiences. So yeah, that's really good. For anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about with this, I think you should definitely have a chat with Lindsey. Take the assessment. It's a short 5-minute assessment ish, something like that. Inexpensive as well, really. But you can learn so much from it. So yeah, definitely dig into that, and you'll get to the point where you'll understand what some of your friends are like and understand why they're different and all the rest of it. But yeah, that's really good. So we've mentioned about achievements, writing down achievements and kind of thinking about them, having them to hand, and also kind of reviewing them and speaking them out. Any other bits and pieces within the strategies?
I think an important thing is to remember you're not alone. So remember the statistic, around 70% of us will struggle with this at some point. So if we maybe think about businesses, that could potentially have meant 7 out of 10 businesses wouldn't have started because they didn't feel they were good enough. I think it also is what you were saying around perfectionism, of starting to really analyse what you are wanting to achieve and why you're wanting to achieve it, and what a realistic measure is. So SMART goals are great within this, because what we often do with perfectionism is we trick ourselves. We think we're making progress, we think that we're moving forward, but what we're really doing is just polishing the edges of things that don't really need polishing. So I think you'd alluded to some of this, I will only launch when I've got X amount of followers, or I've done this, or I've done that, or X products ready. And actually, sometimes it's just getting out there. So reconnecting with your why, your purpose, your real thing, because then you're taking the actions that are actually moving you forward, rather than the actions that have actually got you stuck. You've not realised that you've got stuck into that loop of perfectionism within this.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good. So yeah, I'm kind of just, I could go in lots of different tangents. I'm just just reassessing where I am. This is really, really good. Maybe let's pause on the strategies for a minute, because I'm quite curious to know a little bit more about, like, you've mentioned that once you got to the point where you were starting your business, you're happy that you're not Tony Robbins and Marie Forleo and everybody else. Once you'd kind of started the process, the reason behind this question, I will get to the question in a minute. The reason behind the question is more, I know there's people out there listening to us, and they're at different stages in business, and maybe they are struggling, thinking, it's just not happening. I go around in circles, not getting anywhere. I should quit. Sometimes quitting's good, but most of the time it isn't. There needs to be a lot of good signals, I think, before we quit well, or quit when we should. Most of the time it is just a lack of confidence. So what were some of the struggles then that you've kind of overcome yourself in starting the business?
So I think there's so many. The biggest thing is the mindset. So it's that fear that you're not good enough, that there's not enough clients, that they're, so from a coaching point of view, there are a lot of coaches out there. So it's coming from that headspace of scarcity rather than abundance, and actually thinking that there are however many billion people on the planet, and that actually there is more than enough for all of us from a business point of view to be going after and to be servicing. And ultimately, if actually everyone in the world wanted what we had to offer, we wouldn't be able to cope. So actually it's good that not everyone wants that. So, and I think for me, it was also that the reframing of these feelings of, I'm feeling out of my depth, I'm feeling not good enough, I'm feeling that I'm a bit of an imposter at the moment on my confidence, but that is a good thing because it means I'm growing and developing. Because when we're in our comfort zone, we don't have these feelings. So, as I said to begin with, when I first went into a job, I realised I had this behavioural pattern that I feel like I was out of my depth. And then once I got used to that, those feelings dissipated. And then I was looking for my next challenge. And so once I got used to it, once I got through that learning curve, that's when the comfort zone had grown, but I was no longer growing and developing. And it's only when I took the next challenge. And it's the same with your business. It's only when you are upskilling, when you're going up to that next level, when you're pushing yourself, when you're trying to go from, 5 figures to 6 figures or 6 to 7 figures, and you're doing something that's different, that you're likely to be feeling these things. And so it's reminding yourself and reframing that of, this is a good thing. This means that I am pushing myself. And that was a huge thing for me to kind of take that on board and keep going. Because as you said, it's so much easier to shrink back and sit within your comfort zone. But that's not where the growth is, and that's not what's going to take your business forward.
Yeah. Staying in the comfort zone is comfortable, but it's not exciting, is it? There is, and I guess people have to decide: do you want a bit of excitement, or do you want kind of mediocrity? If that's not insulted everybody listening that's in their comfort zone, but you just can't grow without being in that outside of the comfort zone. Yeah, I like that. I like what you said as well about, if everyone on the planet had a coach. I'm biased anyway. I've seen the benefit in my own life. I've seen the benefit in my clients' life. So I know coaching works. It's not for everyone all the time. There are certain times when people are ready. Certain people aren't necessarily prepared to take action at certain times or look at themselves. But yeah, even if everyone on the planet had it, coaches need coaches as well. So we could all, completely cover everybody and still need more coaches. So yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. It comes back to the bigger picture thinking, doesn't it, rather than just kind of being confined. Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of business owners out there, in whatever their field is, they're thinking, everyone's got this, or who needs another music band, really? I've thought that in the past. It's kind of like, seriously, how do all these people make money, being musicians? I guess some people don't, but there's always a new act. There's always somebody. And let's not go down there because we haven't got time for that. But it's an interesting way to reframe. I like that. I think that's really good. I think that's helpful for people as well. So, we are kind of rushing to the end of our time. But before we finish, let me just curious again, really. Do you have any sort of daily habits that you do that help you stay on track? Like, do you write down achievements daily? Do you other things, bit of yoga, a bit of running, or talk to the dog, or anything that, you'd be happy to share that might help others?
So I do have a morning journal. So that tends to focus on kind of accomplishments, but also gratitude. So obviously there are some times that you don't have necessarily feel that you're achieving. And as you said, sometimes it's good to stay in your comfort zone for a bit, because it would be exhausting if we're always outside of it. But no, I find journaling, thinking about what I'm grateful for, big and small, is a really good way to start my day and and to have that positive mindset. I do think that's really important. I do also try and do 20 minutes minimum exercise in the morning, whether that's going for a walk or a run, doing a HIIT workout, doing a bit of yoga. So again, it's getting my mind going with the journal, getting my body going with a bit of exercise. And I'm a huge audiobook listener. So lockdown has actually meant I've done less in the UK because I used to do it on commutes and things like that. But the morning walk and run has now been a bit, not always, because I sometimes like to hear the nature, but sometimes it's nice to get immersed in a bit of learning and self-development and listening to audiobooks.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good. Really good. Yeah, I think whatever you, and it will be different for everyone. So everyone listening, don't rush out and try and do all of that for you, because it may not be the way you're wired and what works for you. But yeah, it's finding something that we can do regularly that helps make us happy, but helps us stay focused on the important stuff and the health side of it as well. If we grow our business, we said this before, if we grow our business and our life falls apart because our health is no good, we've got the balance wrong somewhere. So yeah, having something regularly is really good. Thank you for all of what you've shared. It's all practical stuff, really useful stuff. For people that want to touch base and kind of follow you more, what's the best, as well as doing DISC, if they want to have kind of a coaching chat and set up some sessions and explore that for them, what's the best way for them to touch base with you?
So I do have a website, so it's lindseyhood.net, and it's got a lot of information on there. It's also got a lot of free resources as well, so if people want to actually start to explore things for themselves, read some blog posts. Yeah, just hopefully there'll be lots on there that's going to actually help people move forward in their own journey of self-awareness and understanding.
Okay, yeah, no, that's really good. We like free stuff from credible people, from experts. Yes, definitely. Some stuff that's out there that's free, it just takes our time. We don't need that. But yeah, no, it's good that you offer some free stuff as well, because it helps. It is a journey, isn't it? And people discover kind of they just discover who they click with more and who they can work with, and it's different times of their lives as well. So yeah, no, that's really good. Thank you for everything that you've shared. I've really enjoyed our chat. I'm surprised it's gone as fast as it has, really, but there we are. But for everybody listening, grab a hold of the book if you haven't already got it. You may have been ordering it while listening to this podcast. That would be a smart move. I'm not on commission, so hey, just buy it and buy one for your friend, by all means. But it's got stuff in it that's really going to help you. It's a practical kind of, it's not pick it up, read it, close it, put it on the shelf and never look at it again. It's practical stuff that you just, from my experience, when you're trying to just kind of grow and maintain a healthy mindset, you need regular input, and having a resource that you can just pick up and kind of feed on every now and again might only be half a page. That's all you need certain times. This is one of those books. So yeah, I would definitely encourage you to get one of those. If you don't want to, just listen to the podcast again, and then you'll hear me say at the end again, and maybe then you'll come. Anyway, I'm just joking with you, really. But for everybody listening, life is short. So let's be smart. Let's be proactive about what we're doing on purpose, whether that's in our business lives, whether that's in our personal lives, our leisure time. But let's make most of life. Let's enjoy it. And it makes sense to hang around smart people and to get input from experts. So yes, that's all I'm going to say on that. We believe in you. If you're proactive, you can do it. So yeah, we love you and we wish you all the best. Catch us on the next episode. But thanks, Lindsey, again for everything you shared today. It's been really good. I've really enjoyed it. Bye everyone for now. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to Yeukai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yeukai.businessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.